Hey everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are tackling a battle that's often called the forgotten battle of World War II.
Yeah, the Battle of Okinawa.
And to really get into it, we have an incredible interview with historian Saul David.
That's right.
So we'll be using that to kind of guide our discussion today and really pull out some of those unexpected insights and personal stories, that make this battle so significant.
Exactly. I think what makes this deep dive so fascinating is we're going to explore a pivotal moment in history, not just through, the grand strategies or the statistics, but through the eyes of those who were actually there.
Right. And I think for people who maybe don't know much about the Pacific War,
Sure.
it was a conflict known for its brutal island hopping campaigns across, vast
It's
distances.
huge. Yeah.
And Okinawa, which is, just this small island
Yeah.
in the vast Pacific,
Yeah.
became the first battle on Japanese home soil.
Yeah, it was more than just a strategic location. It represented a symbolic gateway to mainland Japan, a stepping stone to the heart of the enemy.
Right. So taking Okinawa was crucial for the Allies
Yeah.
because it would give them a base of operations right on Japan's doorstep.
Yeah.
But I imagine defending their homeland was equally important for the Japanese.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They were prepared to fight to the death.
Mm-hmm.
But they knew they couldn't win a traditional battle, against the just overwhelming force of the American military.
And the American forces were massive.
Huge.
We're talking 500,000 soldiers, over 1,000 ships, and 20 aircraft carriers.
I mean, imagine trying to fit the entire population of like Chicago onto one small island.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's insane.
It gives you a sense of just the scale of
Yeah.
the American military presence.
Oh.
So the Japanese knew they had to shift tactics
Okay.
instead of, their usual aggressive attacks.
Mhm.
They dug in deep.
Okay.
They turned the island into this fortified labyrinth of tunnels and bunkers and hidden gun emplacements.
Oh, wow.
They were determined to make Okinawa a killing ground for the Americans.
Oh my God.
It was a battle of attrition, designed to inflict maximum casualties.
It sounds almost like a return to the trench warfare of World War I,
Yeah.
but like even more brutal and intense.
Oh, absolutely. And the sources we have really bring that brutality to life. David talks about the use of flamethrowers to flesh out Japanese soldiers who were hiding in caves,
Oh, wow.
explosives that just shattered the landscape, and even napalm,
Oh, gosh.
a weapon that would become synonymous with just the horrors of war.
Yeah.
Just imagine fighting in that environment day after day, under constant threat of death.
No wonder over 26,000 American casualties were attributed to battle fatigue.
Right.
It's more than were killed in action.
Exactly.
So this wasn't just a physical battle, it was a psychological one as well.
The psychological toll was immense. Soldiers faced not only the constant threat of death, but also just the horrific conditions, the relentless shelling, and the knowledge that every inch of ground gained came at a terrible price.
Yeah.
But what makes Okinawa truly unique is that it wasn't just a battle between soldiers. Okay.
A large civilian population was trapped on the island, caught in the crossfire of this brutal conflict.
Oh, that's a horrifying thought. What happened to those civilians?
Well, fueled by desperation and propaganda, the Japanese military painted a terrifying picture of the Americans,
Okay.
claiming that they would commit atrocities against the Okinawan people.
Oh, gosh.
And this led to a tragic situation where civilians were often caught between two warring armies, fearful of both.
Yeah.
David mentions a particularly heartbreaking story of a 15-year-old Okinawan boy who was forced to kill his own family
Oh, my gosh.
because of that propaganda.
It's just unimaginable.
It's a stark reminder of the devastating impact war has on innocent lives.
Yeah.
And the statistics are truly sobering.
Yeah.
Over 1/3 of the civilian population perished during the battle.
Wow.
Some died in the crossfire, others from starvation or disease,
All right.
and some tragically by their own hand, driven to suicide by fear and despair. It's a grim testament to the true cost of war, a cost that extends far beyond the battlefield and deeply into the lives of those who never wanted to fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
But amid this horrific fighting, there was another element that would come to define the Pacific War,
Yeah.
the kamikaze attacks.
Right.
We'll get into that more in just a moment, but first we're going to take a quick break.
So the kamikaze attacks were more than just like a military tactic. They represented a shift in the Japanese mindset.
Yeah.
A willingness to sacrifice everything for the emperor and the homeland.
Yeah, these were young men, often barely trained, who flew their planes directly into Allied ships in suicide missions.
It's hard to even imagine.
Yeah, think about it. You're on a ship, you see this plane hurtling towards you, there's no escape,
Yeah.
And you know the pilot is intentionally going to his death.
It must have been terrifying for the American sailors.
Absolutely. The kamikazes really shook the American forces. They
Mm.
sank 36 ships and damaged over 200, including several aircraft carriers.
And the psychological impact was even greater. It forced the Allies to really reconsider the potential cost of a full-scale invasion of mainland Japan.
So did the brutality of Okinawa, especially like the psychological impact of the kamikazes, play a role in the decision to use the atomic bomb?
Well, that's a question historians continue to debate.
Yeah.
David highlights a crucial meeting on June 18th where President Truman discussed alternatives to invading mainland Japan,
Hmm.
and the casualty figures from Okinawa, both military and civilian, weighed heavily on their minds.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to imagine the weight of that decision.
Right.
On one hand, you have the potential to end the war quickly and save countless lives.
Right.
But on the other hand, you're unleashing a weapon of unimaginable destructive power.
It's a chilling thought, but Okinawa served as a grim preview of what a mainland invasion might entail, and some argued that the atomic bombs, while horrific, were a necessary evil to prevent even greater bloodshed.
But wouldn't some argue that using such a devastating weapon was a step too far no matter the potential cost?
Of course, the debate surrounding the atomic bombs continues to this day.
Yeah.
It raises fundamental questions about the ethics of war, the limits of acceptable violence, and the long-term consequences of such actions. And David doesn't try to provide easy answers, but he does offer a glimpse into the agonizing decisions faced by those in power at that pivotal moment in history.
David mentions the writings of Eugene Sledge, a Marine who fought at Okinawa.
Right.
And his book paints a really vivid picture of the battle and its lasting impact on those who experienced it firsthand.
Yeah, Sledge's account is incredibly powerful because of its honesty.
Right.
He doesn't shy away from the horrors. He witnessed the trauma, the guilt, the nightmares that continued to haunt him long after the fighting ended.
Wow.
His words are a stark reminder that the true cost of war goes far beyond the immediate casualties.
Yeah, and perhaps that's why remembering battles like Okinawa is so important.
Yeah.
They force us to confront the brutal realities of war and the lasting consequences for both individuals and nations.
David makes an interesting point about remembrance.
You know, while we commemorate World War I with this kind of somber reflection, Okinawa doesn't hold the same level of recognition even in America.
Yeah, it's almost as if it's been overshadowed by the other major battles of World War II.
Right.
But perhaps that's because Okinawa was such a brutal attritional battle,
Yeah.
lacking the clear-cut heroism or strategic brilliance of other campaigns.
And David also suggests that the American commander, Simon Buckner, wasn't the most imaginative leader.
Oh, okay.
He relied heavily on frontal assaults, which resulted in heavy casualties.
Right.
So could a different commander have achieved a different outcome? One that might have shifted the calculus regarding the atomic bomb.
That's a really interesting thought.
It's a fascinating what if to consider.
Yeah, it makes you think about how much individual leadership can impact the course of history, even within the vast scale of a global conflict.
Absolutely.
But we focused a lot on the American perspective. What was it like for the Japanese fighting on their own soil, facing almost certain defeat? Well, David draws upon Japanese sources, including interviews with captured officers and accounts from Okinawan civilians.
Okay.
And these sources offer a glimpse into the Japanese mindset, a mix of duty fear and a deep-seated belief in their emperor's divinity.
Their willingness to fight to the death, even resorting to suicide attacks, must have been really difficult for the Americans to comprehend.
It was a clash of cultures and ideologies. The Americans were fighting for victory, for a return to normalcy, but the Japanese, facing overwhelming odds, were fighting for survival, for honor, for a way of life they believed was under threat.
And caught in the middle were the Okinawan people.
Right.
Their lives shattered by a conflict they didn't choose.
Okinawa became a crucible, a melting pot of suffering, sacrifice, and ultimately resilience.
David's book, Crucible of Hell, seems like a must-read for anyone who wants to delve deeper into this often overlooked battle.
It's a powerful and poignant exploration of the human cost of war and the enduring impact of those experiences, both on individuals and on the course of history.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
From the grand strategies and battlefield tactics to the personal stories of those who lived through this horrific experience.
And while the Battle of Okinawa may be a relatively unknown chapter in World War II, it's a story that deserves to be told and remembered.
Yeah, it really is. And it's incredible how these individual stories and decisions can really shape our understanding of a massive conflict like World War II.
And speaking of pivotal figures, we haven't really touched upon the impact of President Roosevelt's death during the battle.
Yeah, Roosevelt's death was a seismic event, not just for the war, but for the entire world.
Hmm.
Despite his failing health, he was this unifying figure, a master of diplomacy who held the Allied coalition together, and his passing left a void in leadership at a really critical moment.
And suddenly you have Harry Truman, a man who had been vice president for just a few months,
Right.
thrust into the presidency, having to navigate the final stages of a global war and grapple with the decision of whether to use a weapon unlike any the world had ever seen. It's an incredible burden of responsibility.
No wonder Truman aged so dramatically during his presidency.
Right.
He inherited a world in chaos and had to make choices that would define the course of history for decades to come.
And Okinawa, in a way, became his crucible, a
Mhm.
trial by fire that forged him into a wartime leader facing unprecedented challenges.
It's almost poetic, isn't it? Okinawa, a
Mhm.
crucible of hell for the soldiers who fought there.
Yeah.
Also became a crucible for the man who ultimately made the decision to end the war. It makes you think about how interconnected everything is, how different events and personalities converge to create these pivotal moments in history.
Yeah, and that's the power of delving into history. It's not just about memorizing dates and names.
Uh-huh.
It's about understanding the human drama, the decisions made, the consequences faced, and the ripple effects that continue to shape our world today.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Battle of Okinawa, what are some of the key takeaways you hope our listeners will walk away with?
Well, I think it's crucial to remember that even the most difficult chapters of history deserve our attention. The Battle of Okinawa, despite its brutality and the moral complexity surrounding it, offers valuable lessons about the human cost of war, the impact of leadership, and the long-lasting consequences of decisions made in times of crisis.
It also reminds us that history isn't just something that happened in the past.
Exactly.
It shapes our present and continues to influence the world we live in today.
And that's why it's so important to engage with history, to learn from it, and to use those lessons to build a more just and peaceful future. By understanding the past, we can better equip ourselves to face the challenges of the present and create a better tomorrow.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the Battle of Okinawa. We hope you found it as thought-provoking and insightful as we did.
It's been a privilege to share this journey of discovery with you. And as always, we encourage you to continue exploring, to seek out new perspectives, and to never stop questioning the past.
And who knows, maybe you'll even be inspired to check out Saul David's book, Crucible of Hell. It's a truly gripping read that will stay with you long after you finish the last page. Until next time, keep diving deep, and we'll see you on the other side.